I shoveled my neighbor's driveway every winter for 6 years without being asked. Last week, after clearing 2 feet of snow, I collapsed from exhaustion. I woke up to his boots on my chest and his voice cold. "Nobody told you to help. Stay off my property." He reported me for trespassing. 3 days later, he lost something he never thought he would. I live in a small, icy town outside Erie, Pennsylvania. Winters here don't just come, they hit hard. You step outside some mornings and it feels like the air is trying to peel your skin off. The snow doesn't fall light, it dumps, thick and fast. And if you don't get on top of it early, you're stuck. 6 years ago, I moved into this neighborhood. Quiet street, older homes, most people kept to themselves. I didn't mind. I'm not the chatty type. I work maintenance at the local school district, so I'm up early, and I don't sleep much. I like routine. I like knowing what I need to do. That's how I noticed Rick. He lived in the small blue house next to mine. Gray hair, always wore the same army green parka. Walked like every joint in his body hurt. First winter I saw him, he was standing on his porch with a snow shovel in his hand, just staring down at the driveway. The snow was deep. Like 18 inches deep. He didn't move for a long time. I had just finished my own driveway. I looked over, saw him still standing there, not even trying. I didn't say anything. I just walked over with my snowblower and started clearing his. He didn't stop me. Just stood there, arms crossed, eyes squinting against the wind. When I was done, he said, "Didn't have to do that." I said, "I know." That's all it was. Next snowstorm, I did it again. Then again. For 6 years. Every time it snowed, I did his driveway right after mine. Never knocked. Never asked. Just did it. He never said thank you again. But I kept doing it. I figured maybe that's just how he was. Old school. Quiet. He never offered to pay, and I never wanted money. I guess I thought it was neighborly. My dad used to say, "Do the good thing and walk away." So that's what I did. Every damn time. Over the years, I'd sometimes see him sitting on his porch with his old black lab. Dog barely moved, but Rick always looked at it like it was the last living soul he could stand. The dog died 3 winters ago. I remember it because I was clearing the driveway and saw the empty leash hook on the porch. Rick was sitting out there in the cold. No coat. Just staring at the street. I finished the job slower than usual, thinking maybe he'd say something. He didn't. But as I was packing up, he gave me a small nod. That was the last sign of appreciation I ever got. This winter was different. We had early snow and way too much of it. I'm not young myself. Mid-50s, some arthritis creeping in. But I kept going. I'd wake up sore, but I'd shovel his place before heading to work. No one ever asked me to. It was just what I did. Then last week, it came down hard. 2 feet overnight. Wind made it worse. My snowblower jammed twice. I had to dig out the intake with my hands. By the time I finished my driveway, my arms were shaking. I knew I should have gone back inside. But I didn't. I crossed over to Rick's. Started the blower. Pushed through the heavy banks. I remember thinking I should stop, that he wouldn't even care. But I kept going. I remember my chest tightening. I thought maybe it was just cold air. Next thing I remember, I'm on the ground. My vision was all gray. I couldn't move right. I was dizzy, flat on my back in the snow. And then I felt pressure. On my chest. Rick's boots. Standing on me. He leaned down. His face was hard. His eyes were empty. He said, "Nobody told you to help. Stay off my property." Then he walked back into his house. He didn't check if I was okay. Didn't ask if I needed help. Just turned around and left me in the snow. I got myself up. Took forever. My legs weren't working right. My gloves were soaked through. My coat was open. I don't even remember unzipping it. I went inside, sat on the floor of my hallway for a long time. Couldn't stop shaking. Couldn't stop thinking about his face. The next day, I heard a knock. Police. Rick filed a report. Said I was trespassing. Said I'd been warned. The officer didn't seem that into it, but told me I had to stay off Rick's property from now on. I tried to explain. 6 years. Every storm. Never a problem. Didn't matter. I went back inside, sat down, and stared out the window. For a long time. Just kept thinking, what kind of person does that? And then, I got angry. Not the kind of anger where you yell. The slow kind. The kind that settles into your bones and just stays. 3 days went by. I didn't leave the house much. I didn't see Rick at all. No lights. No movement. His trash cans were still sitting out by the road. Mail overflowing in the box. Snow piling up on his steps. I knew something wasn't right. But I didn't go check. He made it clear, stay off his property. So I didn't. Instead, I made a call to Adult Protective Services. Told them I was concerned about a senior living alone. Said I noticed he hadn't cleared snow or picked up mail. Might be a safety issue. They showed up that afternoon. I watched from behind the curtain. They knocked. No answer. Then came the paramedics. Then police. Turns out, Rick had fallen inside. Slipped in the hallway. Broken hip. Couldn't reach his phone. Had been on the floor for more than a full day. He was alive. But barely. They loaded him onto a stretcher, bundled in blankets. As they wheeled him past my house, I stood there watching from the window. He looked straight ahead. Didn't glance toward my house. Didn't see me. Or maybe he did, and didn't care. Next morning, I got a call from a hospital nurse. Rick listed no family. No emergency contacts. They asked if I was a friend or relative. I said, no. I'm just his neighbor. He told me to stay off his property. And I hung up. A few days after the hospital call, I noticed something strange. A white sedan pulled into Rick's driveway. A younger guy stepped out, maybe mid-30s, jeans, flannel jacket, beard. Looked around like he didn't recognize the place. He tried the front door. Locked. Then he looked over toward my house. I stepped outside. Just stood on my porch. He called out, "Hey, you the neighbor?" I nodded. He walked over, introduced himself. Said his name was Mark. Said Rick was his uncle, kind of. My mom's cousin, he explained. Haven't seen him since I was a kid. Hospital called me since I'm the only one who ever signed a card for him. I didn't say much. Just listened. Then he said something weird. They told me he'd been laying there a day. That right? I nodded. He looked away. Jesus. That's when he asked if I'd seen it happen. I told him no. I told him I hadn't been over there in days. He squinted. I thought you were the one who used to shovel his place. I didn't answer. After a long pause, he said, "Look. I don't know what went down between you two, but I found a whole box of old photos in his closet. Letters too. One of them mentioned you. Called you the idiot who thinks shoveling earns respect." I felt something twist in my stomach. Mark kept talking. Said he was going to get the place cleaned up, probably sell it. He's not coming back, he added. Doctors say he's gonna need full-time care. And he's not the type who lets people help. He asked if I wanted anything from the house. I know he wasn't good to you, he said. But maybe there's something worth keeping. I told him no. He shrugged. Said he understood. But the next day, I went over anyway. Mark was inside boxing things up. He waved me in. The house smelled like stale coffee and old rugs. Everything was dark wood and yellow walls. Like time stopped in 1987. I didn't take anything. Didn't touch anything. But I did notice a drawer left open in the back room. Inside was a small folder labeled VA Appeals. I opened it. Pages and pages of denial letters. Disability benefits. Claims for back pain, knee injuries, PTSD. All rejected. There was one letter, folded and creased 100 times, from someone named Marion. A woman. The handwriting was soft, like someone who didn't want to sound angry. I know you think I abandoned you, it said, but you pushed me out. I can't carry your hurt anymore. Under that, scribbled in red ink, Rick had written, "Nobody stays." I stared at that line for a long time. Mark asked if I was okay. I said yeah, and left. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that sentence. Nobody stays. He wasn't wrong. But maybe he made it that way. The next day, a city official showed up. Zoning, or something like that. Said Rick had an old permit for an outdoor shed that never got inspected. There was a fine attached, and it would delay the property sale. Mark was annoyed. Said he didn't have time for this. Asked if I'd mind letting the inspector access the backyard through my side. I agreed. That's when I saw it. The shed. I'd never looked inside before. It was locked. But the inspector had a key from Mark. Inside, it was mostly junk. But in the back, under a tarp, was a stack of old snow shovels. At least 10. All worn down. Wooden handles cracked from weather. And taped to the wall above them was a single photo. Of me. From years ago. Clearing his driveway. Just me and the snow, blurred from motion. I stepped out of that shed feeling like I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to. Mark didn't ask what was in there. But that night, I started planning. He said Rick wasn't coming back. He said he was the only relative. So I made a few calls of my own. City records. Title office. Property tax details. Turns out, Rick hadn't updated his will in over 20 years. And the person listed as executor? Marion. The same woman from the letter. She never legally gave up claim. So I tracked her down. And when I told her what Rick had become, the man he'd shown me, and what he'd done, she didn't act surprised. She just said, "Yeah. That sounds like him." And then she asked, "Why are you telling me this now?" I said, "Because I think he's finally alone. And he deserves it." A week later, I got a call from Marion. She sounded tired. Said she'd been thinking about what I told her. Then she asked something that threw me off. "Would you mind meeting me there? At the house?" I didn't want to go back. But I said yes. She showed up on a Friday afternoon. Wore a long brown coat and held a folder under her arm. She looked around like she was visiting a ghost town. Said she hadn't seen the place in almost 30 years. Inside, she didn't say much at first. Just walked slow, touching the tops of furniture like she was feeling for memories. She finally stopped in the kitchen and said, "He used to be warm. When we were kids, he was the only one who stuck up for me." Then she opened the folder. Inside was a copy of Rick's old will. Her name, right there. Executor, sole beneficiary. She sighed. "I don't want the house. I don't want anything. But if I don't claim it, the state gets it." Then she paused. Looked at me. "Would you take it?" I laughed. "Take what?" She was serious. "Everything. The house. The property. I'll sign it over. I just want it off my hands. But you have to promise you won't let him come back here." I was stunned. I told her I didn't want anything from Rick. She said, "I know. But maybe it's not about him." She handed me a card, her lawyer's info, and left. I sat on Rick's porch for a long time after that, just thinking. I didn't call the lawyer right away. I didn't know what I'd say. What it would even mean. The idea of living in the house of a man who once stood on my chest while I was unconscious made my stomach twist. But I couldn't stop thinking about that shed. The photo. Those shovels. A week later, I went back inside. Alone. I sat in Rick's living room and started opening drawers, going through boxes. Not because I wanted anything, I just needed to understand. That's when I found the notebook. It was tucked behind the heater vent, wrapped in a Ziploc. Yellow pages. Thin handwriting. The first entry was dated 1993. Most of it was angry. Rambling. But not in a crazy way. More like a man who never learned how to say what he really felt. One entry stood out. Saw him out there again today. Don't know why he keeps coming back. Doesn't ask for anything. Just does it. Makes me feel like shit. Like I can't even manage my own damn driveway. But also, I wait for it now. I hate how much I wait. I read it twice. Then a third time. There were dozens more. All about me. Some bitter. Some grateful. Some just confused. Like he didn't know how to feel about someone doing something without expecting anything back. The last entry was short. If I fall, no one will come. Not even him. That's how it should be. I left the house without taking anything. But I made the call the next morning. To Marion's lawyer. Not to accept the house. But to suggest something else. I told the lawyer my idea. He was quiet for a second, then said, "That's unconventional. But not illegal." I said I didn't care if it was unusual. I just wanted it done right. A week later, the documents were signed. Marion officially transferred ownership to me. I didn't tell anyone. Not Mark. Not the neighbors. I didn't move in either. Instead, I emptied the house. Cleared it out completely. Everything except that shed. I left the shovels. I left the photo. I locked it, changed the padlock, and kept the key. Then I put up a for rent sign in the yard. I listed the house myself. Cheap. Month to month. No background check. Just one rule, you don't ask about the previous owner. Took 3 days to get a tenant. A young woman and her kid. She said they'd been sleeping in her car. I told her the heat worked, and the neighbors minded their business. And that was it. She moved in. I gave her a month free. Rick never called. Never wrote. But I kept getting updates, indirectly. The care home sent mail to his old address. Bills. Appointment slips. One letter said he'd refused physical therapy. Another said he was non-compliant with medication. He wasn't getting better. One day I got a letter addressed to current owner. It was from Rick's lawyer. Said Rick had requested the return of personal effects from his shed. I didn't respond. The next week, another letter came. This time it was handwritten. From Rick. He didn't start with "Dear." No hello. Just, "I know you think you did something noble. You didn't. You proved my point. You did the thing everyone does. You walked away. Like they always do. And now you're holding on to something that was never yours. That house is filled with things that were never yours." I read it once. Folded it. Threw it in the trash. Then I went out to the shed. Opened it. Stared at that picture of me, stuck to the wall. It had yellowed around the edges. But it was still there. I didn't know why he'd taken it. Why he'd kept it all these years. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was some sick way of remembering what he couldn't say. I thought about burning it. But I didn't. Instead, I added something. I went back to my house. Dug out an old picture of my own, me and my dad, clearing snow when I was a kid. Taped it next to the one of me in Rick's shed. Then I locked the door. And for the first time since all this started, I didn't feel angry. I just felt done. Sometimes I still wake up early when it snows, like my body's waiting for something I'm not supposed to do anymore. I'll look out the window and think about that shed, those pictures, and how a man can spend his whole life pushing people away just to prove he was right about being alone. And the truth is, I'm not sure if helping him all those years made me better, or just easier to forget.